So those two teams, it's not like when we're talking about, I think, oh wow, like they're not gonna get anywhere. Fine, like in a playoff context, they're still but in terms of like but in terms of exceeding expectations and even making it, I think that they did. I think there's a really, especially San Francisco now with this quarterback thing. Like you got Brock, you got Trey Lance. I don't know about Garoppolo, but I mean you got a bunch of these guys now.
Hmm.
I don't know where you go moving forward, but I think this year in the playoffs, I mean, you're probably going to get smoked by one of these teams. But I think what these two teams showed, I guess, is that they kind of have a bit of a brighter future heading into the different certain years to come. So who knows what's going to happen? But so do you not have an NFC team coming out and winning the Super Bowl this year?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be. I think that the Bills are still the team to beat in the NFL. Only because, and this is something that transcends football. The ability that Josh Allen has to he just makes it look so easy. And I really like the Bills offense. Obviously the Chiefs are a team, I believe they have the same record as the Bills. Buffalo with that one game ahead of them. That's why they might end up getting that bye week. I do think that the Eagles are probably in a better position than the Cowboys to come out of the NFC East. But I don't think that the 49ers can beat the Eagles if they're playing this weekend or next week, purely because the Eagles have a far superior offense, which trumps the 49ers defense, which can be exposed. Obviously, like 9 times out of 10, it won't be. But that's just a Super Bowl kind of whatever Super Bowl clairvoyance we can have for the future. That's what that conversation is about. But I do think that the 49ers are in an excellent position. And even with Garoppolo, I don't think that the team is a whole lot different. So the 49ers do have a little bit of an edge, but I don't think offensively they have it. What do you think that the 49ers are better with Purdy or with Garoppolo? Because I remember I was reading this article at the start of the season, and it said the 49ers have moved on to Trey Lance. So where do you see the 49ers as far as their most optimal position to be in at this time of the year?
At this time of the year, then again, like I said, I'm not a big 49ers fan, nor am I a consumer of 49ers propaganda. Sorry, football games. But I think that right now you got to roll with a hot hand, man. Like you got to roll with
Yeah.
Brock right now. As crazy as this sounds, like the fact that we're having this conversation is a wild thing. But if you're San Francisco, you roll with the hot hand because that's been, I guess, in all of sports. What is that? That's sort of the rule that you kind of go with to an extent. Is you don't just when
Yeah.
someone has momentum, when someone has flow, you let them keep going. Now, if we're like second quarter of NFC divisional game or wild card game or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and he's not performing up to par, then you can go to a guy in Garoppolo who's been there, done that. So I don't know. Then again, I don't want to play coach here, but I'm saying that that's something that you can look at to a degree. But if I were San Francisco right now, I'd go with the hot hand. I'd keep going with Brock.
Yep.
See where this thing takes us. Because, like you said, right now it's a two-man show offensively. It's
Hmm.
McCaffrey, Brock, and that's it. And that's it. And to a degree, that can be a good thing because you're maximizing the most out of those two players.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like you said, you got an injury-prone guy in McCaffrey who's doing X, Y, and Z every single night. And then you've got an inexperienced quarterback who's kind of just in the moment and in the flow, and we'll see where this thing happens. But when a real test comes their way, that's when I think we're gonna need to really. That's where this conversation is really gonna be interesting. Is when they run into the Eagles, the Cowboys. Sorry, never mind. The Eagles, and
The Vikings, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, maybe, and who knows? But that's sort of my take on it. What do you think of? What do you think of San Francisco and sort of the NFC in general? What do you think of the whole playoff picture? What do you think is going to play out?
Yeah. Well, kind of like I was mentioning, I think that it's very hard to know kind of the degree of success that we can expect from Minnesota. A lot of people are picking. I believe they're playing the Lions this weekend. A lot of people are picking the Lions over the Vikings, so the Vikings are a huge question mark. I think that the Cowboys are as well. Um, but it's going to come down to the Eagles and the 49ers for me, unless the Cowboys can kind of get a little bit better traction in these last couple of games. There's news that they might sign Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know how much that would actually play a role in kind of perfecting their offense for the Cowboys. I would say that it's going to be between the 49ers and the Eagles. I really want to see the Eagles, how they can play, how they can perform. I have a lot of faith in Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to win the MVP. But I do think it's going to come down to the Bills being the team to beat, and that's what it's going to come down to. But hey, I'm very much appreciative of how the NFC looks compared to last season, because I want to see Tom Brady for as many games as he has left, because I want to be watching greatness. I'm not too crazy about the Green Bay Packers because they're in the same division with the Vikings, and I very much want the Vikings to succeed, because they haven't really had a season where at one point they were 8-1 in a very long time, if ever. I don't know too much about that, but the Rams as well. They got the ring last year, and here they are. They're nowhere to be found. So
Would you say it's this might be a side note. Would you say it's a fair comparison to make to say that the Vikings are kind of like the Titans in that like they'll always be at the top of they'll be like that team in the standings and they'll be there, might win a game in the playoffs, but they'll never truly like break like sort of break that glass ceiling. Like what do you think of that analogy and sort of their position overall?
yeah, well, first of all, I don't think that the Titans are actually even a good team. They're just in a terrible division in the AFC South there. Just like the NFC South, you've got Tampa Bay, you've got the Panthers. Panthers might even just leapfrog Tampa Bay altogether. We're going to have to.
Oh, you think Carolina can come back and take Tampa's spot?
Well, I don't think that Tampa Bay is showing any signs of consistency. I think that Tom's ability to get the offense involved, especially against a difficult team, I'm not entirely sure what the 49ers' remaining schedule is, likewise with the Panthers. But the fact of the matter is that the Buccaneers are 6-7 and the Panthers are 5-8. So these next few weeks are going to be very important to either of those divisions. And that is also the case, like back to your question with the Minnesota Vikings. They're in the NFC North, and Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit this season have been huge letdowns. So you could say that the Titans are in a very similar situation because no one's really going to catch up to them, just like how the Vikings have been able to distance themselves as one of the top teams in the NFC altogether, because the Titans don't really have a whole lot to battle with this season. I do see Jacksonville emerging next year if they can get a little bit better in their secondary as well as their corners. I believe they signed Calvin Ridley, so he might come back next year if he doesn't get suspended again. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are definitely gonna resurge for sure. Green Bay, obviously, it looks like Green Bay is just a bad team because Rodgers has been playing every game so far this season, but the team is incapable of scoring necessary unless when they're playing the Chicago Bears, they'll just hand them that free W, right? So the NFC North is a little bit of a toss-up, but I think that the Vikings are a good team. Especially with this holiday season. A lot of people are questioning if Santa's for real. I hear the kids on the street. They're saying, "Matt, I don't know if the Vikings are for real." And you know what?
Dang.
We're gonna find out. We're gonna find
Okay.
out.
Well, who's your dark horse? If you were to say like, okay, NFC and AFC picks for like, all right, I doubt it, but like, sort of, it can be sort of an emotional decision or a decision where you're like, okay, if I had to put my insurance on one team that no one expects to win and I can place like a lot of money to bet on, who would it be?
I definitely did not see Miami playing as well
Oh, that
as
was a
they have
shock to me
been.
when I found that. Yeah.
That was a huge shock. And you know what is the craziest thing that has happened this season? Is that at one point, I believe it was week 10 or week 11, the Buffalo Bills were tied with the worst record in the AFC North. Or pardon me, the AFC East. They were 6-4. The Patriots were 6-4. I believe the Jets were 7-3, and the Dolphins were 7-3. So that division was a huge kind of hurricane this season. Obviously, things have leveled out a little bit more. The Bills were in a bit of a slump. They were losing to the Jets. People were losing their minds. And, the Bills have kind of returned to form. Like I said, they've just been the Bills. I mean, the Bills have just been that consistent, solid team. I think, as crazy as it is to sound, people are actually last night's telecast, they were showing some of the percentages of teams winning the Super Bowl. Obviously, it depends who you talk to, but they were giving Cincinnati a higher percentage than the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. I believe it was around 8 or 9%. And I think Cincinnati is a dark horse, pardon me, along with the Dolphins in the AFC, because they have been so inconsistent. And at the same time, we can look at them and we can think there's some amazing talent there. We can easily conclude that they are going to be a contender in some degree. So Cincinnati, Miami, in the NFC, I personally don't believe in any of these teams, like the Commanders or the Giants or who else. It's like honestly, we could throw the Cowboys in there, because the problem is that in the AFC, I believe it's way more wide open. You've got teams like the Ravens that nobody really pays attention to because it all depends. Like, the Ravens' success all depends on which side of the bed Lamar wakes up in the morning on Sundays. So the NFC is a little bit more clear. Like, we can tell, okay, yeah, the Giants, they had a hot start, but they're not for real. The Commanders are good, and I genuinely want them to make the playoffs this year because I like their team. But at the expense of the Seahawks, absolutely not. At the expense of the Giants, go for it, all in. So the NFC is a little bit more clear to me. There's really it's going to come down to the Eagles and the 49ers, because like I was mentioning about the Vikings, of course I think that they're for real. Like, I genuinely think that they can take down a team like the Giants, or the Seahawks, or if they play them in the playoffs. But they're not going to beat the 49ers. They're not going to beat the Eagles. So let's just be realistic here, okay? So let's just accept that. Dark horse for you, my friend. We've got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah. My NFC dark horse. I would say I would have said the Seahawks, but I'm not going to play my bit right now. You know what? I can't count Tom out. I just can't.
That's true. That's a great point.
It's a completely emotional decision. It really is. But I'm saying, like, they're in the like, one can make an argument. Probably the most clutch athlete in the history of sports. Like, there's no one when it counts most, and you need your team to win. Even against the Rams last year, by the way, very close, very close to pulling in Atlanta.
Yeah,
very close, right?
Yep.
But so when you think about that, that's why even when you said Carolina coming back, I'm like, I don't think Tom's gonna let him come back. I don't think that's even a possibility. So my NFC pick would be the Bucks, only because I'm imagining, like I said, like I've told you before, if football was a best of 7, no chance. But if you take things one game at a time, 4 games.
That's all it is. That's all you got.
4 games. And I'm thinking, if Tom Brady really needs to win 4 games straight, I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm not an advocate for DraftKings. I'm not sponsored. Thank you very much. So that's that. My thing is, I think Tom Brady's my dark horse in that sense. And I'm gonna go with your you're mentioning the Ravens. I'm under the same belief to a certain extent as well. I think depending on which side of the bed Lamar Jackson wakes up on, and depending on how the team's performing, I think the Ravens and the Bucks are my dark horse picks. Only because there's not a lot of attention being put on both of them to a certain extent. So that's what's going on my head. But then again, in terms of football, obviously, I'm my PhD is in curling, so that's where my specialty stands. So don't judge my opinions on that.
Well, Mohammed, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It was great. We were able to talk about a lot of different things, and we're gonna get you on the show again. So thank you so much for being a part today in this episode.
Curling Olympics. I'll be free to chat about.
Curling Olympics. We'll be covering that. It's a small wave. It's a small little area each year, but we got to shout out. We got to be inclusive of all the Canadian legends that there are.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend.